Hello, it's Steve, and you're watching Smoking Cardboard. In my previous video, we talked about what you need to buy to smoke a pipe. If you haven't watched that, there'll be a link in the bucket below to that and a list of all these videos on my channel. Now we're going to talk about preparing the tobacco to go into the bowl slash pipe, packing your pipe. Tobacco, the whole goal of this is to have this product slowly burn in this in your pipe. So to do that, we need to have the tobacco to be close enough to each other to ignite the different pieces of tobacco, but also to get oxygen to the places that need to burn. We got too much oxygen or too much tobacco, and that's where things start to go bad. And there's also the other element that's in there, that this tobacco is got moisture in it. So the moisture can play into that as well. So for starters, we have some different cuts of tobacco. Generally speaking, I think if you took some of my suggestions of what you purchased above, something like your Lane 1Q, which this is not, is going to be strips of shredded tobacco. There are going to be different tobaccos that are going to be blended together like that. That's called a ribbon cut. That is probably the most common cut for aromatics. So all aromatics are going to be pretty much cut similar to that. They might be different thicknesses of the ribbons, but they'll be like that. Some of the other types of tobacco are going to be a flake, and this could get really confusing if you bought a tobacco that looked like this, where it's just a big sheet of tobacco. So how do I get this in my pipe? Or some combination of the two, like maybe this is partially broken up, but there's big chunks in my tobacco, and different stuff like that. So I will talk about this packing your flakes and coins and stuff like that in a little bit. The first thing that we're going to want to be concerned about before we start packing our pipe with this tobacco is how dry or moist is it. Generally speaking, we want, you can smoke pipe tobacco at various moisture levels, but that's just going to take time and experience to know how to do that and what a various moisture levels even mean. So for the ribbon cut, the moisture level you want it to be at is that the tobacco is springy. So if I clump it together, it wants to mushroom back out. I can push it together and it'll mushroom back out. If I push it together and it stays clumped, then it's going to be really wet, be considered really wet. If I crush it together and it just stays crushed because it's dry and you're like breaking it down, now we know that the tobacco is way too dry. So somewhere in between it's sticking together and it actually starting to crumble because it's so dry, it's going to stay springy. The springier it is, the probably closer to the drier it is that it can produce more spring until finally it just crushes and creates a powder. So if it's really wet, some of those tobaccos, like the Aromatics, have some chemicals on them that just make it look like they're water, but it's really chemical, so they just might not ever really dry out. So maybe you leave it out for 30 minutes, and then we can try packing our pipe from there. Other ones, generally speaking, pipe tobacco is going to be stored more moist then you probably want to smoke it. So just setting it out on a piece of paper for 10 minutes before you try to go pack your pipe is pretty common. It's pretty normal. But the whole goal with it is you can smoke really dry tobacco, you can smoke really moist tobacco, but you're just going to have to pack your pipe differently so that you get the moisture or get the oxygen around the tobacco, that it's not too close or too far away, and all that sort of stuff when we pack our pipe. So, unfortunately, moisture is a little bit of a feel thing, and you'll get the hang of it. It's just going to take practice getting to know your tobacco's moisture level and what works well. So let's go and take some of these cuts and try to pack our pipes. All right, so here's a aromatic tobacco that I have. You can see how moist this stuff is, but it's kind of oily feeling. It's not just moisture. If I put this together on my little tray, I just use a leather sample I got from a furniture store once that I could keep. If I press this together, it's gonna have a little bit more tendency to clump, but it is expanding out, so it's not horrible. But if I have something like this that's been in the jar for a while, I'm almost done with this tin, you can see that it looks drier. And when I put it out here, there's not really big pieces because I'm kind of towards the bottom, the ribbons, but it almost has a tendency to crush. So this would be considered too dry, but I'm still having success smoking it just fine. Whereas something like this one here is going to be more all right. I can combine it together and it's just going to grow back out. You can see that there. That's kind of the moisture that I was kind of talking about earlier. So when we go to packing our pipes, we can just right now pack it with the one that is the right amount of moisture. It's expanding back out. We can put it in this pipe here. The goal is to again have very little pressure down at the bottom and it tighter towards the top. The reason for that is so that we can have the tobacco close enough that it keeps going, getting burnt, but it doesn't plug our airway down at the bottom of the bowl. So you can kind of do a method where you just are filling this up. So I just stuck it in the jar, just kept scooping it until I had it. Generally speaking, I would try to avoid putting your finger more than the first quarter of the bowl. You're going to have a tendency to overpack your pipe if you are trying to get tobacco all the way to the bottom of your bowl. Normally, when you just loose fill it like that, you can just tap the sides and see that it gets filled. And I don't need to push it down. At this point, I can just add more tobacco and use that tobacco to press it down. So now I grab some more with my fingers, and I'm going to push it down and press it in here. It doesn't have to look super pretty. If I got extra, I can take it out or whatever. But then I'm going to use both my thumbs and fill my tobacco in. Now, naturally, this tobacco is going to have pressure so it stays in. I can tip this thing over. The tobacco's in, all this sort of stuff. I have spring. I push it in, and it wants to come. It comes back a little bit. I can push this with about the same. I want to push this at about the same as amount of pressure to push like a marshmallow down or type thing. So that's one way to pack a pipe. The whole goal here is to get the tobacco in the bowl. So with the aromatic, like this one here that's really moist, how I might pack that might be a little bit differently. Here I might try to let it fall down into it like that. Just letting it fall down in, and then towards the top I put a little bit more, and with how moist this is, that might be all I have that I put in this bowl, and then I give it a go. Again, this has natural pressure on the tobacco. I tip it over, it's not going to fall out, that sort of thing, but it's a lot looser pack than this bowl here. I was putting a lot more at the end there towards the top. Other types that I can do here are like those flakes. So if I take the flake, I can rub it between my palm of my hands to get a consistency that is more similar to this broken flake here, like this one here. It's a bunch of pieces of flake that just got broken up. So I can do that myself by rubbing it and then pulling the different pieces apart. Or I can leave it as a flake. If I leave it as a flake, generally these flakes are pretty moist. That's part of just how they retain moisture better, and they're going to smoke slower because they're like big logs versus wild grass or something like that. So I kind of pull them apart like that so they get some air, and I'll let them dry for 15-20 minutes or so. And then I like to put them together into a stack of sticks. Learning how much just takes a little bit of practice. And I like it that it's smaller than the bowl, so I can get it down all the way. Now at this point you could tear these in half and just stuff it in the bowl here, but I also kind of like to twist it. So I kind of took it and I started to twist it into the bowl, and then I pushed it in towards the top. So at this point the top is pretty well smashed together. I'm not smashing the bottom because those sticks are kind of going vertical and pushing against it. But the other way you can load it, like I was trying to show you, was take a pipe like this, take like maybe 1.5 flakes that I have kind of spread out here. Then I can fold it in half like this and kind of make a football that I'm shoving in here. Now this is too big for the pipe, so I need to take some of this off because I want this to slide into the pipe. I don't want to smash this into the pipe. I want to just be able to push it into the pipe with a relative ease. So there we go. Sometimes they'll say, hey, stick some little pieces up on top that'll help get it started, and that's fine. I find that to be kind of messy too, in the sense that those little pieces on top tend to want to go flying and put holes in your shirt. So beware of that also. So that's kind of some different ways. The coins, which I don't have any right now the same, are kind of a rolled tobacco that's cut. So they're similar consistency to this. They're just circles. You can just kind of stack those overlapping each other and then fold them over, kind of put it like a football, and put them into your pipe. But I think the main point I'm trying to get here is I wasn't sticking my finger down into the pipe ever here, and I was putting all the pressure at the top of the bowl. The bottom of the bowl here is going to not have as much pressure. Another trick that some people find helpful when learning is to stick a pipe cleaner into the draft hole while you're filling your bowl. That way you know that you don't have anything. And then when you take it out, you can spin it and take it out, and now you know that there's no pieces of leaf that are in your draft hole. So that can be a tip that also helps you get started. All right, so kind of showed you how to pack. One of the things I didn't mention that I probably should have mentioned was check the draw on the pipe before you pack it. And that means breathe in see how much resistance it is to puff in. And then after you fill the pipe, you should check the draw again. And it should be kind of the difference between drinking a straw that's empty versus one that has water in it. So there's some resistance, but not it's not tough. I can still gently draw. So I can check all my pipes. Some of them are going to be less resistant, like this one that needs a little bit more airflow because of the higher moisture. And then you'll also want to make sure you try that with the filter in the pipe. If you are going to use the filter, this is the time to put it in. Some of the filters have a colored end to it that's plastic. You just put that end towards your mouth. Then this ceramic bit goes towards the heat. Other than that, you should be ready to go to, now you got your pipe loaded. We'll talk about where to smoke your pipe and light it next.